apologise for being late here in the chamber. I'm going to read back on the blacks the content of the presentation so far by the Social Democrats, but I do want to set out, if I can, in my response, some of the actions that the government have been taken to protect our people in this time of unprecedented high energy prices, to answer your questions on some of the issues around the windfall taxes, which we will be introducing in line with European legislation, and as promised by myself and other government colleagues late last year, and also briefly to refer to the Energy Charter Treaty, which was rightly, I think, a subject for discussion in your motion, and I'm quite happy to share our thoughts and reflections on that. Firstly, we have to recognise we are in unprecedented times because of energy being used as a weapon of war, because prices are at a multiple of their historic average, because Russia's using gas and oil and coal as a bargain or as a lever in their war in Ukraine, which we have to resist and make sure that we protect our people and support the people of Ukraine as we do so. I just want to do so. I do want to set out because it's important that we describe what has been happening to the prices in the market. First of all, the most important factor affecting electricity prices in Ireland is sustained high energy international prices since the second half of 2020. Data supplied by the Commission for Regulation of Utilities indicates that average electricity and gas household bills have increased to a combined total of over €4,000, which is an increase of some 80% compared to the figure before the Russian invasion. In the aftermath of the invasion, at its peak during August last year, wholesale UK natural gas spot prices were trading at over 600 pence a therm, which is some 13 times the pre-pandemic average level of 50 pence a therm. Due to high gas storage levels, warmer than normal winter conditions and policy efforts to reduce natural gas demand across Europe, wholesale gas prices have fallen dramatically and are currently well below the peak values of last year. However, those wholesale prices are still trading at some 150 pence a therm, which is 3 times their historic levels, pre-pandemic levels. It's important to note that Ireland faces a particular challenge in this regard, as we are a price taker in international markets, and that Irish electricity and gas prices have historically been higher than other European countries due to long-standing drivers such as geographical isolation, a dispersed population base, very high fossil fuel dependency in our country, and our small market scale. The best long-term approach to insulate consumers from volatility on international wholesale energy markets is to invest in energy efficiency and renewable energy and expand interconnection with European neighbouring markets and deepen the internal market in energy. That's what we are doing at scale and at speed. In line with higher wholesale prices, wholesale electricity and gas prices rose steeply in the first quarter of last year and have remained high since. The recent reduction in wholesale gas prices in Europe is very welcome, although prices remain significantly higher than pre-crisis levels, with wholesale energy costs accounting for a significant percentage of total supplier costs. A sustained period of falling wholesale gas prices can lead to retail market price reductions. However, supplier hedging that results in a significant proportion of energy purchased several months in advance may impact the ability of suppliers to reduce prices, notwithstanding the decline in the wholesale cost of gas. Due to different forward hedging strategies of energy suppliers before this winter, my department anticipates that they won't see prices falling into early next year. That's something that depends on what each supply company's hedging policy is, but we cannot anticipate an immediate reduction because the gas they're using was bought forward, as I said, at times of much higher prices. A more sustained period of lower wholesale prices will be needed before we see both gas and electricity prices falling significantly. I want to highlight the extensive response the government has also taken, given those high prices, to protect our citizens over the last 12 months. We pledged some €2.4 million in a package of supports during 2020. There are significant measures. I'm conscious of time here, so I won't go through all of them in detail. The energy credits, I disagree with Deputy Cairns. I believe that actually was a very successful and correct way of protecting our people in a particular time, and it was joined by really targeted measures in social welfare, particularly to increase targeting the most vulnerable, and that combination, according to the ESRI and others, showed us protecting the most vulnerable through this very difficult period, and we will continue to do that as we wind down the measures that we need to do to give us the budget capability to provide the social welfare measures that we need. If I can then maybe to go on to the more specific key issue, I think, within the motion here, which we don't disagree with, the introduction of both the temporary solidarity contribution and a cap on market revenues. We're going to do that. It's a European-wide phenomenon. At an extraordinary meeting of the EU Energy Council on the 9th of September last in Brussels, which I attended, it was agreed that we would have to address the extraordinary situation of energy prices in Europe and to agree to advance work on possible emergency measures to mitigate the impact of high prices on consumers and support demand reduction for gas and electricity to strengthen the EU's winter preparedness. Following the meeting, ministers noted the contribution provided by the Commission and invited the Commission by mid-September to propose additional measures, including the capping of revenues on inframarginal electricity producers with low cost of production, a proposal incentivising the coordinated electricity demand reduction across the EU, the design of emergency liquidity measures that would ensure market participants have at their disposal sufficient collateral to meet margin calls. And it was expected that this would address increased volatility in future markets. On the 22nd of November last, the Government announced the decision to introduce measures to address windfall gains in the energy sector through the implementation of Council Regulation EU 2022-1854 on an emergency intervention to address high energy prices. We decided to place a cap on all market revenues of non-gas electricity generators. We set that cap at €120 per megawatt hour for wind and solar, which goes much further than the EU regulation of €180 per megawatt hour, in order to fully capture windfall gains while maintaining appropriate future investment signals. We made sure that we are going to ensure that excess revenues will be collected and used to support electricity consumers. The cap on market revenues will operate from December last year to June this year, as set out in the Council regulation. We've decided to implement the temporary solidarity contribution to apply to taxable profits, which are more than 20% above the baseline period from 2018 to 2021, and they were now subject to a rate of 75% windfall tax, and losses from previous years will not be considered in the calculation of taxable profits. The legislation to enact this government decision is currently being progressed by my department. Significant stakeholder engagement with other departments, with crew, EirGrid and industry have been conducted to inform policy design and to make sure we have practical implementation that works. In addition, a large body of economic and financial analysis, regulatory impact assessments have been conducted by the departments and the government's economic and evaluation staff to provide evidence to inform the policy. The proceeds to be collected from the implementation of Council Regulation 1854 is highly dependent on the level of wholesale gas prices over the coming winter. Estimates as of February this year are that proceeds collected will range from some 280 to 600 million euros. It's at the lower end of the range signalled by Government in November last year, which was from 300 up to 1.9 billion, with the primary reason being the reduction in wholesale gas prices. It's important to remember that the further the wholesale price falls, the lower the proceeds will be. I have other issues that I wanted to set out in our Energy Poverty Action Plan, but given the short timeline available to me, I might finish and conclude with the issue of the Energy Charter Treaty. This government has real concerns and has expressed strong views within the EU on the compatibility of the Energy Charter Treaty with the Paris Climate Agreement and the Energy Charter Treaty's dispute resolution mechanism, which allows investors to sue states who are party to the Energy Charter Treaty for failing to protect energy investments, in particular fossil fuel energy investments in the context of decarbonising energy systems. We believe that these views carry more weight in international negotiations by advocating them as part of the European Union. To date, Ireland has not announced a withdrawal from the Energy Charter Treaty because a majority of EU member states and the Commission are still signed up to the treaty, while a modernisation reform process of the Energy Charter Treaty was being negotiated. The Government continues to reserve that option to support a coordinated withdrawal from the treaty if it's not modernised to align with the Paris Agreement, to address our concerns and to support the international effort to decarbonise electricity systems and promote more renewable energy. Ireland will continue to keep that position under review and work with the EU partners to reach a common position. If a decision is made for coordinated exit of the EU member states from the treaty, we will fully support that position. As I've highlighted, we are working on a whole range of different measures to protect our country in this time and to support international efforts to restore security as well as decarbonisation of the energy system.
Thank you, Minister.